Good afternoon, everybody, Mother and all our other viewers. Welcome to another Mosaic coffee break. This time we're delighted to have as our guest Sarah Keegan from the CS Partnership, along with Claire, one of the co-founders of that business. And Sarah is going to talk to us this afternoon about change management, a subject that all of us have quite a bit to do with from time to time. But I don't think any of us would claim to specialize in it like Sarah does. So Sarah, without further ado, perhaps you could tell us a little bit about your professional background and how you came to specialize in this particular area.
Okay, I will do. By mistake, I think, is probably the best way to specialise in anything, isn't it? I qualified as a solicitor in 1996 as a property lawyer. And I still say to this day that I'm a property lawyer. If you cut me open, my DNA says property. I can't stop obsessing about it. I love it. It makes my brain work. Looking at the law of it makes my brain work. And I ended up building and running one of the biggest property departments in the country. And we ran 4,000 transactions a month. And as you can imagine, that's where a lot of my now experience and processes come from. And as well as that, we had 100 staff. And you can imagine as well from there, consequently, that would mean that if we changed anything, even for 5 seconds changed anything, then I learned very much the hard way how not to bring people along the journey of any kind of change whatsoever. And I'm a big advocate actually in doing things, seeing how it works and thinking that didn't work, did it? Let's do it a different way next time. So in 2012, my business partner and I, our firm that we were in at the time, decided that it was merging into Shakespeare's. Just pause to say merging into Shakespeare's, and we decided we would jump out and actually do what we do at the moment and what we were doing already at that time, which is re-engineer departments and across different types of departments, not just property, but re-engineer them. And then for the purposes of what we're just about to chat as well about how you change the people involved in that process as well, from the senior partners right down to whoever's in the post room, right all the way through. And so, yes, that's how we do it and how we are where we are. And so now we teach, we coach rather. We also do a lot of training, and the training is always on the new products or services or software that we're implementing. Ostensibly, that's what it looks like it's on, but actually what it's usually about as well, running alongside that is, because it's pretty easy to show somebody how to work something, but what we actually do is a much more softer approach to where are you now? How are you all feeling? Don't worry about this. We're going to be going over here. And here's a couple of good stories along the way and a lot of support and backup and communication.
So, Sarah, you mentioned changing from the senior partners downwards. Who are the most difficult ones to change? Is it the senior partners, those longer in the tooth?
Well, yes, but it's not. Yes. Usually, well, I'll rephrase that. If you've got the board, let's call them the board. If you've got the board's buy-in to change, then change is much easier without a shadow of a doubt. So in my experience, I've never seen decent change happen without the board being involved in that mindset. So that's the first thing. But are they the most difficult? Not always, because they're not necessarily the people at the coalface who are doing the work that we are implementing the change of. They as long as they're behind you and they have a fit in or leave, that's my polite version for the purposes of the recording. But if they have a fit in or leave attitude and they're behind it and they're positive, then actually the biggest people to change are the people who've been doing it since Adam was a lad, possibly. Yeah. Or, because it could be, it's nothing to do with age, the people who've been trained by those people. So you'll find a 29-year-old doing something that they wouldn't dream of doing outside in the real world, so to speak, but they're sitting at their desk behaving in a certain way in a law firm. For example, printing things off and sending things out in the post and never questioning why that's a good way of behaving when actually they do everything else on one of these. You know, that's one of them. So all of that is the hardest thing to change. And we have I don't know if yes, I can. I don't think she'll watch it. We have a very famous, our most famous person that we ever trained to do anything. We called No Joan, because everything we ever said to her, she said no. Even if it was, would you like a cup of tea? No. So we called her No Joan, no, between ourselves. But actually, she was the kind of person that drained you energetically, you know, that emotional thing of, I'm going to have to go home and eat 14 pizzas or something like it. But then, to her massive credit, she would then worry about it so much, she'd actually adopt the change amazingly. So it depends. It really depends. Yeah.
So how do you go about getting that change? Sorry, Nigel, to jump in. How do you go about getting that change?
So I'm going to say one of the most obvious things in the world is by talking to people and by accepting that in the first instance, the first thing they're going to say to you is no, absolutely not. No, I don't need it. Somebody else will need it. It's not me. My work is bespoke. I can't do that. I won't do that. There's no reason for me to do that. So the first thing to do is to just sit in a wall of, but it's going to happen, isn't it? And just keep going. So quite often you can get those people to listen, those people to understand that you're never going to, that they're not suddenly going to be left high and dry. You're taking them on a journey, and the journey is going to be there. And then with regards to lawyers, the best thing to do is to tell them what will happen if it goes hideously wrong and they're the person holding the baby. Because in my considered experience, no lawyer ever wants to be the person that everybody else turns around to and says, well, you didn't do that, so you've made a mistake, and now we're reporting you to the insurers. That's one of the key points as well. So there's a really interesting man who you're bound to have all read, who wrote a long time, not a long time ago, because he's still very much writing, but it may be something like 2000. And he was called Dr. Larry Richards. Have you all read about his massive amount of research that he did on lawyers and our personalities? And apparently we have them, so that's the first good point. But secondly, we're super autonomous, incredibly skeptical about anything. So first of all, don't tell us that we have, it's a joke about herding cats, isn't it? Don't tell us that we all have to do something, because I don't. And also, I don't know who you think you are, but I know better than you probably. But also that we have a very low threshold of pain and being told that we're wrong. So there's that. So we're really not great. So we don't have a very good critique level internally. We don't like to be made to feel stupid. Genuinely, if you remember that, if you come back into that, how would you get me to change? Not how am I going to get everybody else to change? How am I going to get me to change? And the reason would be, first of all, you tell me why I've got to do it. And the really good, and make it good, make it like, you know, the SRA is beginning to look at things, and the clients need this and the people need that, and all of those things. Give me the why, then make it painless for me, so I don't actually have to do anything. You're going to manage it all, and then I'll go get behind it and get aboard.
One of the things that I do in some of our workshops is get people to generate ideas, a vast number of ideas in a very short space of time. But what I've found over the years is that the number of ideas per lawyer in the 5 minutes we give them is far, far less than the number of ideas we get from the secretaries and the support staff. It's as if the lawyers don't have the imagination. Their thought processes are reductive and closed end. And I wonder, A, whether that's something that you've found, and B, how you actually get them to open up and their imagination.
I have absolutely found it. It could also be that if you're thinking about ideas, the people that aren't actually doing some of the work that you might be wanting them to change, they're not the lawyers. So I'm going to tell everybody a massive secret here. It's not a big secret to anybody who really knows me. I ran 4,000 transactions a month, never did a case, never actually sat at my chair and ran a case through, never did a search. Didn't know any of that stuff. I knew how to do the law, I knew how to do the people, and I knew how to bring the clients in. But I never actually sat there and did anything. So if I wanted to know how to do something or change something, I had to ask the people that were actually doing it, because that's one of the biggest mistakes in any change element. But so that's the first thing. Secondly, it could well be back to that thing of lawyers don't like to look stupid. So they might have an idea and they might not want to voice it, which is, you know, quite a I might look a bit daft if I say something, and everybody might then know how little I know, because most lawyers will sit at their desks and spend most of their careers, and I hold my hands up to say me too, that somebody's going to come and tap you on the back and say, you really are a bit dumb. I don't know how you got in, but it's time for you, you know, that kind of feeling of So we don't like to do that either. But also, you know what we like doing is words. Yeah, as pause, everybody laugh. We like words. We like the written word. We like to make something a good argument. We like to put something across, and we like most of the time as a profession to think about it. You know, you don't usually get a client law firm to decide like this. They have to have a think, and then they have to work out what the pros and the cons would be. So 5 minutes might not be their ideal thinking time. Maybe if you ever said to them, I'm coming back next week, and at that point I'll give you 5 minutes. I wonder how interesting. I wonder whether you'd actually get everybody to have a whole load of ideas by then.
Just as an aside, our record is 168 ideas in 5 minutes.
Oh, wow.
From how many people?
About 20. We came out about 8 ideas per person.
I think you're right, Barry. Having, my background is actually used to be in sort of management development, and then had the world's worst midlife crisis and became a lawyer, and then ended up on the management board of a top 200 law firm. I have those days where I go, I should have just bought the Porsche. Anyway, but I think trying to do this, it is much more difficult with lawyers than with non-lawyers. And I think the other issue you might want to throw in there is the hierarchy issue, yes. Which is if the senior partner's there, I don't want to throw out an idea in case he or she disagrees with it. Therefore, I'm going to wait for them to say something.
That's right.
But actually trying to get lawyers to engage in any form of development, I always found quite difficult if it wasn't, here's some more law for you to learn. Yeah. If you want to come to a training program, and I'm going to run through another 20 cases that you don't know about, they'd be quite excited. Whereas if you say, I'm going to help you develop your business, run your team better, all this, I'm too busy for that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Sarah, one last thing, because I think we're coming towards the end of this particular discussion. One of the things that I found in practice was that change is possible, but it just takes considerably longer than you ever imagine, and is generally harder than you imagine, but you can get there if you stick at it.
You can do it. My most famous example was when we put in a typing pool. Can you imagine? Can you imagine the beauty as well of having anybody doing your typing? I'd absolutely love it still. But a typing pool. So we in my department, we took everybody one from one away and put them into a pool. And this is why I say I learned the hard way of how not to do something, because I pretty much ripped the band-aid off and just said on Monday, this is what's happening. I'm not actually sure that's such a stupid idea, but anyway, it took about 6 months of daily grief. People literally opening my door, giving me grief and shutting it again. And then all of a sudden it was the norm, and it worked, and it was fine. And you're absolutely right. You just have to wait it out. You have to have iron clothing on, and just keep knowing that what you did was for the best, that you really appreciate these people and you really want them to change. And all of a sudden it changes. And now I tell them all about my coffee machine, which I didn't use and sat on my desk because it was too posh, until I broke my old one. And suddenly within about 7 minutes, I'd got it on, plugged on, making coffee. And I sat back and thought, why did that take me so long to look at? And that's because it's just a pain in the neck, isn't it? Change is awful.
Because it's different. Sarah, that's been really interesting. Thank you very much. And for those of our viewers who thought this was going to be a sort of John Cotter for idiots, thank you for a much more fun and interesting approach to change management. It's been an absolute pleasure having you with us, Sarah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sarah.